Good evening and welcome to Advocates for Urban Agriculture's 6th annual Grown in Chicago Soiree and our very first virtual soiree. My name is Sean Rain and I'm really proud to serve as the Executive Director of Advocates for Urban Agriculture, and I'm part of an incredible team of individuals including Viviana Gentry Fernandez-Payon, our Programs Director, Hasmin Martinez, our Outreach Manager, B. Fry, our Development Coordinator, and Emily O'Keefe, our Marketing and Communications Coordinator. 2020 has been a year that we will never forget. We have experienced so many shifts in our daily lives. Shifts in our global health and economic systems, shifts in our discourse about race, shifts in our professional lives, in our communal lives, and especially shifts in our food system. In the midst of this disruption, we have witnessed the incredible resilience of Chicago's agricultural community and a renewed commitment to collaboration within partners in the food system and across all sectors. In the Chicagoland region, we have the people, the tools, the resources, and the desire to truly build a more resilient and more robust local food system. To do this, racial equity, sustainable agriculture, local economies, care for our environment, and a renewed commitment to collaboration must be the building blocks, the foundation of our collective action together. At Advocates for Urban Agriculture, our mission is to empower urban growers to foster thriving communities through sustainable agriculture and equitable food system. As an organization, we are committed to empowering growers with the training, the resources, and the funding to build more sustainable operations, to building a diverse and stronger network of urban growers, and to advancing policies that allow urban agriculture to thrive in the Chicagoland region. Tonight, in celebration of Chicago's urban agriculture community and in reflection of some of the work that we've done over the course of the last year, we'd now like to show you a brand new AUA video highlighting some of the amazing farms and gardens throughout our city, 4 incredibly resilient growers, and some of our new and emerging programs here at AUA.
So this land that we're currently on has been vacant for 50 years, since the riots in the 60s. Why not create something that would, one, benefit the community, but also employ the community? And so that's just kind of how it was birthed.
There was 5,000 vacant lots in Inglewood, and that a lot of these lots were, not owned by anyone but the city. And of course, these lots were full of trash and people reselling drugs, hanging out. The organization did a massive push to get the city to allow them to purchase the vacant lots. When we first started this garden, there was all this overgrowth where people literally would go in the street until they passed this area because they were afraid that something would jump out. That's how it is, right? So we've reduced the fear on our block. AUA came at that time and they helped me lay some of the footwork.
There's lots of refugees in Chicago, there's lots of urban agriculture, and it just seemed like a perfect fit. There was a real need, and this was like an opportunity to really help people who had been farmers in their home country, who got plopped in Chicago, reconnect with their roots.
We want to educate people to eat healthy. We're both Mexicans. Both of our families have a history of diabetes. And we want to educate people how they could eat healthier and reduce the risk or diminish the effects that these diseases have.
So initially, it was never to be just a food garden. My vision was always for it to be a community garden, a place where people could come and participate in all types of workshops on different types of topics, such as domestic violence, social media behavior for young people. That's really the usage of the garden, right? Just to open it up to community.
Our generation has kind of lost that touch of where our food comes from because, we're used to convenience. So we take in the students, they learn all about urban agriculture, they get trauma counseling. They get exposed to different fields of work in different industries.
Through AUA, I was peer up at the Farmer to Farmer mentorship program with the Catatumbo Co-op, and it was a great learning experience for me as a mentor, and it was a great relationship development with them.
Urban Produce is so exciting. Our founder and our co-owners, Barry and Alicia, want to create a whole ecosystem here in Chicago for people that live here. We want to make sure people are getting safe food, good food.
AUA really helped to really guide and lead them in the right directions. And I think without that particular guidance, we wouldn't have been able to have this huge expansion that you guys are looking at today.
Part of our grant with the marketing is we're going to get GAP certification, the good agricultural practices, so we can standardize our post-harvest handling and get that certification so we can sell to more commercial customers. The COVID grant was probably our biggest connection, and they provided us with funding so that we could buy masks for all of our farmers and hand sanitizer and cabinets so that we could store things. And so AUA has given us the funding to provide all of that to our farmers.
When I started having problems with getting the water permit, my husband was saying, well, maybe we should reach out to some other organizations to see if they had having the same issue. AUA got back to me and said, yeah, there's a bunch of other people that are having the same issue as you. They have actually taken up the banner and helped a lot of people in the, in the gardening world, in the farm world, in the community.
AUA has just always been there for us, and I'd like to have this be more of a resource for the community.
I want to make sure that we continue to help people make their dreams come true. All entrepreneurs, to be able to have a place to sell the items that they're either making or growing. I'm very grateful for their support they have provided me throughout all this time, this 4 years that I've been growing.
Whatever we do here, it's not an individual thing. That EGMK is built on the success from others. Because for community to take more ownership of some of the projects and the ideas and some of the things that we do. Really, really, really open up to community. Come, help us weed. Whatever type of inroads you want to make this place a better place for community, for you as an individual, we're open. Come and share your dream, and we'll do what we can to make it happen,
Before we kick off tonight's event, there are a few organizations that we'd like to thank for making this event a reality tonight. First, thank you to our sponsoring organizations, Groupon, Byline Bank, Option Realty Group, Patagonia, and Loyola School of Environmental Sustainability. Thank you to our funders, Foodland Opportunity, the Chicago Region Food System Fund, the J.R. Albert Foundation, the Builders Initiative, the Mander Foundation, the Lumpkin Family Foundation, Groupon, Patagonia, the Food and Farm Communications Fund, Shiditarod, Apolog Liquors, and to the many individual donors who make our work possible. And finally, thank you to our network of farmers, gardeners, and advocates we are so privileged to work with day in and day out. Your resilience, hard work, collaborative spirit, and commitment to building a more just and equitable food system inspires each and every one of us every day in our roles at AUA. Thank you so much.
Hi everybody, my name is Bea Fry and I'm the Development Coordinator here at AUA. Thanks so much for joining us tonight for our 6th annual soiree, this time going virtual. In your tote bag, you'll see a little one-pager. That one-pager will go over all the things that you need to participate in tonight's events. Additionally, right next to the video, there's a chat box. And there, you can respond to anything that you see happening on screen, comments and questions. AUA staff will be standing by to be able to answer them for you. Jumping right into it, let's start out with our first workshop. Justin from Circle Fungi will be walking us through an intro to mushroom growing indoors with just a few tools. Let's get into it.
Hi everyone, my name is Justin and I'm with Circle Fungi. We are a Chicago-based aspiring cooperative growing fresh mushrooms for food, medicine, compost, and to promote sustainable food autonomy. We envision a local food system where resources, knowledge, and food flow freely amongst our shared connections, building health in our bodies and Chicago's soils. Not only are mushrooms delicious and nutritious, but they also have a lot to teach us in terms of cooperation and transformation. So today, we're going to learn how to cultivate mushrooms. So I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. This land we call Chicago is the traditional home of the Three Fires Confederacy, Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi. It is also the homeland of the Miami, Peoria, Fox, and many more tribes who inhabited this land, and still do. Indigenous people are still here and should be acknowledged as the original caretakers of the land. Environmental rights are Indigenous rights. I want to acknowledge our relationship to that land, not just Turtle Island, but all land, our connection to it, and responsibility to protect it. All right, so as we get started, these are the materials that we're going to need in order to grow mushrooms at home. So this is going to be a low-tech method. Pretty much, what you see is what we need. And the only other equipment you'll need is a stove for pasteurizing your substrate. All right, so you need a pot to pasteurize, which is essentially just low heating your hay or straw, sieve or colander, some isopropyl alcohol. This is just rubbing alcohol you can get at your Walgreens or CVS. Some scissors for shredding your straw. Cropping container. This can be of any size, really. It's just what you want to actually grow out of. If it's going to be on your countertop, maybe something smaller like this, or a used ice cream pail or bucket. But you can actually scale up as large as like a 5-gallon Home Depot Menards bucket, or like a clothes basket if you're growing out in your garden. You're also going to need a water bottle for misting and a little sawdust or grain spawn to get us started with the mushrooms. All right, so as we get started, the first thing that we're going to need to do is shred your straw or hay. So oyster mushrooms can grow off of any number of agricultural waste products. Straw and hay is a very cheap and accessible one. You can also grow oyster mushrooms off of spent coffee grounds, brewer's grains, any number of things, sawdust and wood chips too. But straw is what we're going to be working with today. When you're shredding straw, you want to, cut it down to like 1 to 3 inch size pieces. This just makes loading your cropping or growing container easier, and it also makes for the mycelium's work a little bit easier as it moves through the substrate. So once we have the straw shredded, it's going to be pasteurized, and then we're going to inoculate it with some sawdust spawn. Now all this is myceliated sawdust. Now what is mycelium? Mycelium is actually the primary component of fungi. Most of the time it's invisible, hidden to ourselves. It's usually found in the dirt or in the wood where it resides as it's decomposing dead or dying trees. So the mycelium is essentially like a thread-like structure that moves through the substrate, analyzing its surroundings and breaking down material to then feed back into mycelial biomass. As it does that, it's releasing metabolites, liquid enzymes that actually help to facilitate the breakdown of like the lignin in wood or similar structures in hay and other materials. So it basically breaks it down and creates food for itself. So that's what we're going to be working with once we have the straw pasteurized. For the pasteurization process, what we're essentially trying to do is kill off the competing bacteria in our straw substrate. So we're going to take our straw, heat it up to about 170 degrees in a hot water submersion or in the pot, and leave that at approximately 140 degrees to 170 degrees for 1 to 1.5 hours. That's going to kill off all the competing bacteria, only leaving the thermophilic bacteria that actually is not going to compete with the mushroom mycelium. So as we load up the pot, you fill up the pot full of water about less than halfway. You want to have your straw preloaded in your growing container. Make sure it's packed down all the way because you'll be able to find that you can fit more in once it's wet. Adding it into the pot, I use 2 separate lids, a slightly smaller lid. That way, one lid can fit inside of the pot, weighing down the substrate and keeping it fully submerged in the water. With the thermometer, I use a standard grilling thermometer, and that way you can locate it, stick it right into the middle of the substrate, maintaining an even temperature, and setting the temperature alarm for 170 degrees so it doesn't exceed that. Once you achieve 170 degrees, start your timer for 1.5 hours. Keep an eye on your stove during this time. You will want to back your heat all the way down to the lowest setting. Otherwise, your water is going to want to boil. And we want to keep it lower than that temperature. So we just finished pasteurizing our straw. Once we've drained the straw, we're going to combine it with our mushroom spawn. In this case, inoculated mushroom on sawdust. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is sanitize the container that we're mixing our straw and our mushroom spawn. Also spray down your hands. You can use gloves. I prefer not to, if at all necessary, just because it's one more thing to throw away. But since everything is pasteurized here, we can just easily combine the ingredients into our sterilized container here. Go ahead and open up your sawdust bag. We're going to evenly disperse the sawdust into the straw. We've got our sawdust spawn that we're mixing into the pasteurized straw. Now, you will probably see that some of this is kind of clumpy. Go ahead and just use your fingers and break that up. The finer and more spread out the sawdust is, the faster your entire substrate is going to become myceliated. The myceliation process, is essentially the white thread-like material in the mushroom mycelium is moving from the sawdust and myceliating the straw. So just use your hands and kind of mix it in together. In terms of mushroom mycologist vocabulary, A lot of people like to use the term the mycelium is colonizing. I like to get away from that term just because of the negative connotation associated with colonization. And so I just refer to the mycelium as what it's doing, myceliating. Because mycelium is not just taking over your substrate, it's actually breaking it down and then making, everything from that substrate bioavailable to any other organisms or plants that are actually connected into that mycelial network. So you'll actually see, anytime you do a little digging outside, you'll see thread-like structures throughout the soil. And that's the mycelium that trees, the plants, are all kind of tapped into. It actually serves as like a neural network or Earth's internet, allowing plants, to actually communicate through this network and, give warning should one plant or tree start to, have to deal with pests or specific diseases. You'll actually see other trees and plants tapped into that same network begin to release the same kind of antibodies that first tree that's been attacked by. To that end, mycelium is extremely beneficial, not just to the environment, but can actually serve as a model for how we, as humans, potentially reassess our own behaviors and acts in ways that can be potentially more good for the community. So this is pretty well mixed. So now at this point, we can pack our straw into the growing container. So with the same way that we sterilize or sanitize our mixing bowl, you should also do to your cropping container, your growing container. Again, just using isopropyl alcohol. It's going to kill any potential bacteria that might be competing and trying to take over the straw as the mycelium is doing its work. So go ahead and sprinkle the hay in. You don't want any like big wet clumps stuck together necessarily, but rather you just want to kind of sprinkle it in and then pack it down. That ensures that the straw is evenly distributed and that there aren't going to be any specific air pockets. Because ultimately we want the mushrooms to grow outward from outside of the container and not into any potential little air pockets inside the container. The hard part's over. Now it's just a matter of being patient and waiting for the mushroom mycelium to do its work. At this point, the mycelium is going to be myceliating the entire straw substrate. This is considered the incubation period. The other thing I forgot to mention, you do want to make sure to pop a couple holes in your growing container. This is going to allow for exit points for the mushrooms to grow out of once the myceliation period and incubation period is completed. So we want to have, I'd say, just a handful of holes spaced about 3 to 4 inches apart. So it's going into incubation now. Just go ahead and stick it into a non-clear plastic bag and kind of keep a little air inside. Again, because the material is pasteurized, you don't have to worry about any specific molds kind of taking over. And you're going to let it sit for approximately about 7 days to start. And you can start to periodically check in on it. But after about 5 days or so, you should start to see the mycelium taking over the entire substrate. And so this container I spawned about 5 days ago. So that's 5 days worth of like mycelial growth. You can see all the white threads kind of taking over the straw and growing from the sawdust. So at this point, it's 5 days in, it's still not ready to fruit yet. So we're gonna let it go another 5 to 7 days. Every other day or so, it doesn't hurt to use a water bottle and just mist down the surface. That maintains like a steady amount of moisture and humidity. Humidity is fungi's best friend. So, that is one of the trigger mechanisms that is required in order for mushrooms to fruit. After the incubation period has completed approximately 10 to 14 days, you'll start to notice pinning happening on the myceliated substrate. So ultimately, you'll see it starting to come through all of the holes that you put into your container. You can also notice it on the top here, where it's just little white pinheads forming. And that is essentially the start, the primordia of your mushroom fruiting body. So at that point, you're going to want to take it out of its incubation bag and actually go ahead and throw like a larger clear plastic bag over the top. So you can use anything that looks similar to this. You want to also cut the corners off because you want to actually introduce a little bit of airflow into your growing chamber. So this is a makeshift humidity tent. It's maintaining the humidity inside while still allowing for airflow. This you're going to want to mist every day with your water bottle. So you're spraying the inside of your humidity tent. You have the corners cut off, allowing for airflow. And that increase in airflow coming from your incubation time is going to be one of the trigger mechanisms that initiates the pinning to begin happening and your mushrooms to begin to grow. As that process continues over the course of the next few days, you continue to spray the inside of the bag. Eventually, you're going to have oyster mushrooms ready to go on your kitchen counter. Okay, so this concludes our workshop on growing mushrooms from home. I hope you learned a few things. Hopefully it sparked your curiosity and interest in mushrooms. They honestly have a lot to offer us in terms of beneficial medicinal components and just as a supplement to our daily or weekly diet. If you have any questions, definitely reach out at fcfungi@gmail.com or on our Instagram, Full Circle Fungi. That being said, enjoy the rest of the soiree.
Thank you to tonight's partnering organizations, Full Circle Fungi, Amor Y Sofrito, Pilsen Arts and Community House, El Paseo Community Garden, Earl and Shelley's, Trader Joe's, Dill Pickle Co-op, Sugar Beet Co-op, Back of the Yards Coffee, Apolog Liquors, Raider Family Farms, Pete's Fresh Market, Low Res Brewery, Englewood Test Kitchen, and Supercana.
We hope you enjoyed learning about how to grow mushrooms at home. For this next workshop, we'll be cooking together. We'll be introducing Karla Morales from Amor Y Sofrito to show us how to make a veganized, traditional Puerto Rican Sancocho. For this workshop, the ingredients are completely customizable, so you can add or subtract to the bag of goodies and produce that you have on your table. Thank you to all the farm businesses and our partners who helped provide the produce for this workshop here. Without further ado, let's cook.
Hola mi gente, yo soy Karla Morales, yo soy Amor Y Sofrito. Hello people, my name is Karla Morales and I am Amor Y Sofrito. Amor Y Sofrito is a vegan Latinx business. I am reinventing traditional staple dishes for vegans to enjoy, and I'm also creating a worry-free experience. So we are allergen-free. I have a little bit of everything for a little bit of everybody, and my goal is to provide a beautiful, magical experience through my food for you all. Today we're going to be making sancocho. It is something we are used to creating after a long day of work or to be festive with the family. Today we're going to be creating it to what we have accessible in Chicago gardens and farms. And what's amazing about this dish is that we can get inspired and we can recreate from what our ancestors have brought us and make it a whole new experience every time we make it. And it's really just open to change, which opens us to other possibilities and opportunities and create a new experience for ourselves every time. So one of the star ingredients in today's meal is going to be yuca, or known as cassava in the United States. And it can be really intimidating. I want to show you how to peel it because I'm sure if any of you have found it at the store, you didn't pick it up and take it home because you're wondering, how in the world am I going to peel this thing? So we're going to explain that to you because it's actually really simple. It can be a little dangerous, so be careful with the knife. I'm actually going to be demonstrating a safer version with the spoon. And so let's get started. We're going to chop the tips off. Again, you have to be careful because it is tough and you have to put force, and so you want to make sure you're keeping your hands away. So we're going to chop the two tips off. That just makes our life easier. Some might be hard like this, so what I like to do is, again, have a sturdy hand and just tap at the knife and it just chops right through it. Then what we're gonna do is pick it up and create a seam to be able to start peeling it. And again, very carefully, just insert the knife just to where you can see the skin ends and just start creating a seam. Take your time. You can use the tip of the knife to cut in deeper if you need to. And what I usually do is I use the tip of the knife to dig into the seam and start peeling the skin away. As you can see, my knife slips, so that's dangerous. So a safer way would be to get any regular spoon and use the back of it, because it does the same thing for us. It just creates a safer experience. So if you guys can see, we're just lifting that tough skin away, and you'll see in a minute that there's two layers that we're pulling away. It's this barky layer that's kind of like tree bark with the wax on it, and then it'll be this thick but not so rough layer, but we also are avoiding that. We're gonna be peeling this off also, and it'll usually have that pink hue. And so I'm just peeling this off just so you guys can see this here, this pink layer of skin. We're gonna be peeling it off. So once we got the skin lifted off of it, you should be able to just go in there with your thumb and your fingers, however, and just peel it off. And it's really simple. You know, it'll get stuck. It's not always perfect, not for me either. But again, you just go back in there with the back of the spoon. You can put it down if it's easier, and just peel away. And clear off your station. You don't want any of this there. And to prep the yuca in chunks, I like to keep them fairly large. So I'd cut like, say 2-inch, about 2-inch chunks. And then I'll cut those in half, just so everyone can get a piece in their bowl. If it worked for me, I'd be selfish and keep them bigger and keep them to myself because they're that delicious. Some of you might be wondering, what is yuca or what does it taste like? Yuca is a root vegetable used a lot on the island in Puerto Rico. A lot of the Taino Indians used it, and it's to me it's similar to a potato. It's the texture of a potato is similar, kind of just like to the next level, and the flavor is it's unique. Again, it's similar to the potato, but just like times 10. So you would have to experience it for yourself to come up with your conclusion on which one is better. But for me, it's a potato times 10. So now that we have all our ingredients prepped, all our root veggies, our corn, the sofrito ingredients, we're gonna start with our base flavor. And this base flavor is something that us in La Isla, in Puerto Rico, we use for the majority of our recipes. And it's called sofrito criollo. And it's a chopped up version of what most people are familiar with sofrito. It's diced up bell pepper, onion, and cilantro, and some garlic over here. I like to use a variety of bell peppers sometimes. Today we're keeping it a little more simple because we're trying to create something that's accessible to us in Chicago, right? So keeping life simple, it'll work. So the way we start this is we put a couple tablespoons of olive oil. I would say 2 to 3. Let that heat up because we want that sizzle. And we're going to start with our onion. I feel like this is hot enough, so we're gonna go ahead and add that onion in there. And we're gonna let that onion cook up until it's translucent, a little closer to translucent, and then we'll be adding our garlic. This won't take too long, this will take about a minute. 1 to 2 minutes, depending on how hot the oil is. This is looking pretty good already. I'm just gonna let that sit for a few more seconds before we put in our garlic. Now that the onion cooked down and it's a little translucent, we'll be adding the garlic. And we're gonna let the garlic cook just no longer than a minute because garlic will start to burn, and burnt garlic in your food will not be so good. We'll let that cook up, I'd say for about a minute. And we'll be adding the rest of the ingredients, which will be bell pepper, whatever color you choose to use, and the cilantro. Again, this is the base for most Puerto Rican recipes. It's what creates all that beautiful flavor and texture and aroma. It's the name, it's my name, it's my business name. So I have this story. I started my business popping up at this gallery, and I had a customer come up to me and he was in awe with the food, and he asked me, oh my goodness, how do you do all of this? And my response was, con mucho amor y sofrito. And that translates to with a lot of love and flavor is the way I would translate it. And once I told him my response, the light bulb went off, and I was like, that's gonna be the name. That's it, because if you're Puerto Rican, you know that all of your recipes, all the food we create, it starts with sofrito, some sort of sofrito. And I grew up with the sofrito criollo, chopped up sofrito, so this is what I like to use mostly in most of my recipes. So we're adding the cilantro right after the bell pepper. We're letting everything cook for just about a minute. We don't want it to be overcooked. If you want it to be overcooked and you prefer your veggies a little more cooked down, go ahead and do that. I like to keep them a little more crisp because they'll also continue to cook down once the stew sits to stew. So we'll let that again go for like about a minute, and we'll start with our root veggies. Actually, we'll start with the spices. We'll add the spices first, and that's going to be what we know as an adobo. And this is going to be a homemade adobo because it's much better than the store-bought adobo because there's no extra anything that we're not familiar with here. And the flavor, it's that much more magical. So we have garlic, onion powder, paprika, cumin, oregano, turmeric, ginger, and I believe that's everything. If I'm missing anything, you'll see it in the recipe. But this is also going to create a lot of that major flavor in our stew. Now that these veggies look cooked down enough for my liking, cook it down enough to your liking, To me, this looks beautiful. The aromas are beautiful already. If you're cooking with me, you should be already experiencing all the magic of this stew. So we're just gonna dump them all in there together. Mix that up. And we'll be adding our salt and pepper in there in a minute. Salt and pepper is also to your liking. You have the measurements in the recipe. But I'm gonna go ahead and just grind some in there. And basically what my soul tells me is sufficient is what I'm gonna do. So we're gonna start with the pink Himalayan salt. And I like to grind that in there. And so, yeah, until my soul says, girl, that's enough. It's good to add a little bit at the beginning because you can always add more, but you can never take any out. So then we're gonna go in with the pepper and we're gonna grind that in also. You wanna start off with just a little. You'll be tasting it once all the veggies are in there and deciding if you'd like more of anything. Really, it's what your heart desires. If you feel like you want to taste a little more paprika or cumin or any of the spices you would rather taste, you are more than welcome to add more or less of whatever it is you like. So this stew is very customizable, very versatile. It came from the Caribbean islands. Every country has its own version of this. We all like to bicker over who it belongs to, but really we all have our own version, and I feel that that just came from our ancestors. We were inspired, and we were able to recreate this to our culture, to what was accessible to us, and to our liking, really. So today we are recreating it in a vegan Chicagoized style, because this is what we had available from our gardens and farms. So, you know, this just shows that you can take something, get inspired by it, and just create your own version. Creating your own version of anything is gonna make it that much more appealing to you and to anybody else. And so be open and have fun with it. Really just experiment and make it an experience. So once this cooks down a little, the spices are already in there, we're gonna start just popping our root veggies in there. And the root veggies we're using today are sweet potato, carrots, sorry, let me go over these a little bit. It's sweet potato, carrots, we have some red skin potatoes over here, and we have some yellow squash and parsnip, and then over here we have another one of the stars of the dish, corn. And corn is so simple, but corn, what corn does in this stew is it soaks up, and most stews, it soaks up all the flavor. And so, you know, most people like to leave the corn for last, and they eat it and they suck all the flavor out of it, and it's just such a magical experience. So there's a few stars in here, but they really all play a major role. So what I like to do is start with the thicker root veggies that'll take a little longer to cook, and we just basically just pop them all in there. And we start sauteing that and mixing that and letting all of these marinate with that base flavor, which is the sofrito criollo. We want to get a little bit of that on all of the veggies. Let them soak up all that flavor. You can see the color here and the texture. You can see the spices. It's art, really, what we're creating. We'll do this for about a minute. Let that soak up. We'll pop the corn in there and let it do the same thing. And it's such a beautiful experience, and really such an easy experience, because once everything is prepped and ready to go, you just dump it in there, cover it with water, make sure your spices and the flavors to your liking, and just let it do its own thing. And an hour later, you just have this amazing meal that's gonna be really fulfilling, satisfying, very hearty. It'll hug your soul, and your family will be happy with it. It's a beautiful meal to be able to share with a large family. And what we do in Puerto Rico is we make a giant pot of this stew, and we invite like the whole town over, and it's just like the main attraction to many of us. So, you know, I mean, we don't have that many people to feed over here, not all of us, but it's also something that you would like to eat throughout the week because the flavors end up marinating. So if you want to create this the day before you're going to eat it, or even if you eat it that same day, the longer it sits, you don't want it to sit too long, but the longer it sits, the more intense the flavors become and the more beautiful the experience is when you're eating it. So I think that these veggies are looking beautiful. We're gonna go ahead and add our corn and let that soak up all that flavor. Then we'll be adding our potatoes and our chunks of onion and the water and adjusting any flavor that we would like to adjust. Oh, look at me forgetting one of the main ingredients over here. All right, let me get that in this bowl. All right, we're gonna pop this yuca in there too, because she gotta get all the flavors to it. We'll do the potato now also. And we'll just add our onion. And again, this is the beauty of this meal, is that you can just pop it all in there and just let it do its thing. This is, again, very versatile. If you would like to add any grains in there, any grains at all that you like, it's doable. Any beans, basically anything that your heart desires, anything that you feel might make this that much more amazing, just pop it in there and don't be afraid. It's really open to just so many possibilities. Make it your own, for sure. All right, so that's looking good. So I'm gonna go ahead and add the water. And we're just gonna be covering it maybe about 2 inches, 1 to 2 inches above all the veggies. The reason I am using water and not veggie stock is because I feel like we are creating a veggie stock with all the veggies. We could be extra and go ahead and use veggie stock, but I feel like this meal is really about the simplicity and making life easier. Again, give it a stir, eyeball it, taste test it, see if it's flavorful enough, salty enough, and just adjust it to how you would like it to turn out. From here, we're gonna let it come to a boil. And once it comes to a boil, we'll turn it down to low and let it do its thing for at least an hour, I would suggest. Again, it's ready as soon as the veggies are ready, and if you're on a time crunch or if you're too hungry to wait any longer, go ahead and have a bowl, but the longer it stews, the better it tastes. So what we have here is a veganized Chicago-nized Sancocho that consists of root veggies, the traditional sofrito criollo, a lot of love and magic, and I hope you guys were able to follow along and you enjoy it. I hope that you guys had fun cooking with me, or that you plan on doing it later on your own and making it your own. And I hope you experience the magic and the love in it. If you would like to contact me, ask me any questions, have any comments, share your finished product with me, follow me on social media, and enjoy the rest of the soiree.
Thank you to the businesses who provided the food for tonight's event: Star Farm, Chicago Bread Club, Windy City Harvest, Urban Shelley's, Willow Garlic Farm, Just Fruit Chicago, Yamas Olive Oil, Dill Pickle Co-op, and Sugar Beet Co-op.
Thanks so much to Karla Morales of Amor Y Sofrito, because that sancocho was amazing. And thanks again to all the farm businesses and our partners who provided produce for this workshop. Next, we're gonna go into a little bit of a celebration. We're coming up on just 1 week away from Dia de los Muertos. And so we're partnering with Pilsen Arts Community House, Teresa y Kira, to show us a nice pumpkin decorating workshop, which incorporates themes from both Halloween and Dia de los Muertos. Now, without further ado, let's celebrate.
Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Teresa Magaña. I am the Executive Director of Pilsen Arts Community House. We are a newly formed nonprofit organization focusing on the arts and culture within our neighborhood here. We offer art classes, resources, mentorship, and opportunities to local artists and also local entrepreneurs like Kira Aguirre from Pilsen Arts. She runs a BYOB painting business housed within our space here. So we are partnered up in that way. And Kira is going to be our facilitator and instructor for painting these amazing pumpkins with a particular theme that she'll talk about.
Hi everybody, welcome to our painting class today. My name is Kira, it's K-I-R-A. It's like Shakira but no Trump. I am happy to be teaching today. I've been invited by Pilsen Arts and Community House to give you a quick step-by-step instructional class on how to paint your pumpkin with a Dia de los Muertos twist. We'll be going over all of our materials that will be included in your kit. You'll have your pumpkin, you'll have brushes, you'll have your paints, and at home to mix your colors, you can use like a styrofoam plate or paper plate, a glass or a cup. Probably don't use a cute glass, maybe just kind of like a throwaway cup with some water that will be to rinse your brushes, and an old rag, t-shirt, or paper towel. So the first thing is first. We are going to take our pumpkin and you're going to choose a nice clean side. Also, if the pumpkin has a little bit of dirt, you want to take a towel or something and just kind of wipe it down. Make sure there's no, dust or little pieces of debris on it. So you're going to also need a pencil. This pencil will help you kind of draw in anything that you want to draw as far as customizing your pumpkin. So together we are going to draw half of a skull, and I'll do that step by step with you. And we'll decorate the skull, and the other half will be open to interpretation. So traditionally for Day of the Dead, we paint or decorate sugar skulls made out of sugar. And this one here is paper mache. So we're going to take some inspiration from the Day of the Dead culture with line work, and I'll talk a little bit more about that too as we're painting together. But we're going to choose one of these scenes here. So I'm going to choose this middle part right here. And with my pencil, and now you don't have to like stab your pumpkin, you just want to very lightly draw kind of like a half circle. It's going to be a half circle. So if you were to draw an entire shape, it would be like an oval, okay? Or a backwards letter C. Does that make sense? So here's my backwards letter C. And this is just a guide, it'll go away with the paint. Now the bottom part where the jaw is on your skull, this little part right here, all you're going to do is add kind of like the bottom part of what a light bulb looks like. So it's going to be like the letter U, okay? And you're just going to draw that half letter U. And you'll have the entire shape penciled out or sketched out for your paint. The next step that you're going to do is, because our skulls have these little eyeballs here, you're going to draw a nice big circle almost in the middle of that letter C up here. So you're going to draw a nice big circle here. Then take your pencil and you're just going to draw a nice circle. You want to make sure that you leave room around in the skull, because we're going to be adding a nice little flower pattern. And then the nose, I always like to draw an upside down heart. So if you want to draw an upside down heart or a triangle, whichever one. Okay, so we're going to do that right in the center where the nose would be in relation to the eye. So don't worry about the teeth. We'll do that later. Don't worry about any designs. We'll do that later. So we're going to take our paints and we're going to place them either on some kind of mixing surface. I like to use paper plates, that way it's less work, and when I'm done, I just kind of toss it out. But if you have a paint palette, because you're fancy, you can totally use that too. We're going to make sure that all the colors that we need are going to be on the plate first. Next, we're going to take our brush, and we're using the big brush. We're going to dry it on the towel, pretend like you're petting a kitty cat. That way it's not dripping wet. And we're going to use the really big brush for really big spaces, little brush for little spaces. We're going to add our base coat to our half skull here, and it's going to be white. So we're going to dip our brush in that white acrylic, and you're going to start at the top and work your way down. That way, if we need a second coat, the top part of our skull is nice and dry. Pumpkin. So we're going to spread that paint, no lumps or clumps, and it's going to feel like butter. You're going to trace out your pencil. The more pressure you put on the brush, the wider the line, okay? So little pressure, a lot of pressure. And you're just going to fill in, going around the eye. You're going to use that seam in the middle. You're going to paint around the nose. Take some more paint, reload, and you're going to fill in the rest of your skull. We're going to wait a couple of minutes, maybe like 2 minutes. Talking about Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, is something that is near and dear to me and my family. Being first generation Mexican American here in Chicago, we celebrate Dia de los Muertos every year. It is traditionally done on November 1st and November 2nd. It's totally different from Halloween. Halloween is October 31st. In my personal artwork, I like to mesh my two cultures. And this is a perfect example of using the American Halloween themed pumpkin and decorating it in a Dia de los Muertos themed is kind of bringing my two cultures together. The Mesoamericans in Mexico, the Toltec, Aztec, Maya, they all celebrated Day of the Dead, which is celebrating their loved ones that have passed. So All Saints Day and All Souls Day are celebrated the 1st and the 2nd. So on the 1st, we celebrate children that have passed, and on the 2nd, we celebrate adults that have passed. When decorating sugar skulls, we usually use a bunch of different colors, which will be decorating our calavera pumpkin mishmash in a second. We like to use a lot of vibrant colors because it's a celebration. We get together and we commemorate and celebrate the people that have passed. So we build little mini altars, and these little altars will have various things. We will have the favorite food or drink of whoever passed. We will also have their portrait. We will have candles, as well as the petals of the marigolds. The other big iconic image is the monarch butterfly. It is said that the spirits will follow these items towards the altar that you have built. We are going to take all of that information and you're going to start to think about what you want to paint on your pumpkin here and customize it. So tiny brush is going to come out of the water, and you want to make sure that you dry it on your towel. And you're going to choose your lightest colors first, which is this yellow. And the yellow is very translucent, it's real see-through. So what you want to do is you want to take a scoop of your white, and anywhere on your plate, you're just going to kind of roll your brush on the edge and take some of this yellow and just mix it in. The reason why we are mixing our yellow and white is to help it pop out on top of that white background. So the yellow is real see-through, and you want to make like a canary yellow or a light yellow, and then that way it's opaque enough to stand out on your pumpkin. So I have my canary yellow mixed up. And the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to paint like little rainbows or like the letter U. And I'm going to do that all around the eye here. If you don't want to use yellow for this step, you don't have to. You can use your blue, you can use your red, you can use your green. Try to stay away from your black paint though. Black is last. So I'm going to do like a little rainbow here. And then I'm going to keep going. And I'm going to follow this pattern all the way around. You're going to take that same color and you're just going to fill it in. Another design that you can do is you usually can find this traditional design on many of the skulls. It's kind of like a little swirl, kind of like an eyebrow, but it has like a little swirl at the end. And right above the eye, I'm going to give it kind of like an arch. And I'm going to pull the brush very slowly because the pumpkin is textured. And at the end of that, I'm just going to add a little cute swirl. You're going to rinse in between colors. Take the brush out of the water, dry it on the towel. Around the nose, so inside here is going to be black paint. We're just going to trace the nose with whatever color you like. I'm just going to trace the outside of the nose. And I'm going to paint the white part, okay? You won't be able to see your color if it's in the orange. Another traditional design are little dots. You could use the tip of your brush if you want, or you can use the handle, the butt of your brush here, and you can dip that into the paint, and you can add little dots all around or anywhere you would like. Next is going to be another cute little detail. We are going to add a little bit of color around the eye. I'll clean up my brush. And then on the opposite side up here, I'll probably use like this nice bright red. Little skull guy here has teeth. So I'm going to use a lighter color, and I'm just going to draw a line, a straight line. And the straight line here is going to be where my teeth are going to go. So I'm going to do little arches on the top and little arches on the bottom. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. And the teeth in the center are a little bit taller, and they kind of go down on an angle. So the teeth all the way in the end are a little bit smaller. So then I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. 1, 2, 3. And then again, they're on an angle. He's so cute. Rinse off that brush, and we'll let this sit. We'll trace those out later, and you can actually add little colors or decorations around that. So we still have this whole half over here to decorate. I hope you guys have been thinking about what you're going to draw on that side. You can also print out something and kind of cut that shape and just kind of like trace it on there. So if you have something that's super cute, maybe like the wings of a butterfly side profile, you can cut that out on the paper, take your pencil and just kind of trace that out. So once you get comfy with adding all of your little decorations, another traditional symbol that is included in a lot of the skulls is the Sacred Heart. So if you wanted to add part of that heart here and the forehead part, you can do like a half a heart and complete the heart on the pumpkin side. You can make orange, or if you already have orange, you can add some yellow in there to lighten it up. And you can start from the top part here, and you're going to put your brush down in the center of that heart shape, and you're going to pull up, creating this little flame. And you're going to do short brush strokes. That'll be our first coat. We can let that sit and then we can go back in and add a little bit more red, a little bit more yellow. In between each color, again, don't forget to rinse your brush and dry it on the towel. So if you want to take a break from this, you totally can and kind of start working on this side. If you feel like, you need to give your eye a break because you're adding too many things, please go ahead and do that. This side here, we're going to add the marigold flower, and we're going to do a little bit of line work to paint in that monarch butterfly. Since our pumpkin is already orange, this helps us a lot because both of those items or images are orange. So all we have to do is mix our orange that we have with a little bit of white. That way they kind of pop. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the center and I'm going to pull out. It's going to look like a cute little pom-pom. I'm going to let this sit and I'm going to do another one. And they can be different sizes. I'm going to do maybe a little bit of these flower petals floating away. So I'm going to use a tiny brush and I'm just going to put my brush down and pull. Acrylic dries pretty quickly, usually within 4 to 5 minutes, depending on how much paint you put on there. Like this Sacred Heart over here is almost dry. You can go back and add a little bit more paint to this. I hope everybody's been looking up or thinking about ideas on what to put on the empty side. Again, you could totally customize your pumpkin however you'd like, just like how we customize the Day of the Dead skulls. Halloween is the day where tradition believes that the dead come back to visit, and we kind of changed a little bit over the years. But back then they used to dress up on that day if they had to go out as different ghosts or scary, garb to blend in with other spirits or evil spirits that might be visiting on October 31st. So that way, if you had to go to the market because you totally ran out of eggs and you didn't go shopping before Halloween, you would dress up as something spooky, and that way you can disguise yourself and get past any spooky or evil spirits that might be lingering on that day. We will go back to our little marigolds here, and I'm going to pick up some red, and from the outside I'm going to pull in, and I'll add like a ring of red dashes. Again, you want to put enough paint on your pumpkin where it's not globbed on. If it's a big glob and you kind of see these lines or textures, it's going to take a little bit longer to dry. So the shape of the butterfly wings. So I'm going to do profile because it's super easy. I'm going to do my orange and white. If you want to use your pencil, you totally can. And the first one, the bottom part wing, is going to be kind of like the letter V. And you're going to round off that V. And you're going to take your orange, you're going to fill that in. And I'm doing a huge butterfly here at the bottom, just so you guys can see. But if you want to do little baby ones, you want to do a couple of them, you totally can. I'm going to take a little bit of my yellow and kind of mix that in there. The top part is going to be pretty simple, so it's going to be a line going up. It's a line going up like this on an angle to the left. And at the end, you're just going to do kind of like a backwards 3. Okay. So I'll use some white so you can kind of see. Here's this line here. And I'm going to do a backwards 3. And then here's the bottom one. There's like a V. And then I'm just going to round it out. You're going to fill that in with your orange. You're going to use a little bit of yellow. You want to use a little bit of white. If you still have like that yellow-white canary color, you totally can use that. And because the butterfly wings are so colorful, we want to kind of add splashes, like really quick brush strokes of these different colors. So our marigolds here, what we're going to do is, now that they're nice and dry, or almost dry, we're going to add our yellow and white. So you're going to take some white. You're going to use a really big brush. And I added a little bit of orange in there just to kind of give it a nice like golden tone. Big brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill all this in. And I'm going to use like a dabbing, or I'm going to pat. And I'm going to take some of my orange and I'm going to start to dab again. And I'm going to take a little bit of red, not a lot, and I'm just going to dab a little bit of this red, and it's going to mix in. But I'm going to just do it in the bottom part. Just on the bottom part here, adding a little bit of this red. Once I have those in there, I'm going to let that set. I'm going to switch brush sizes. And because my little petals are nice and dry, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this yellow gold color that we mixed, and I'm going to swish right on top, leaving part of that orange peeking through. And then I'm going to take my orange, and I'm just going to add a little bit right in the center. I'm going to take a little bit of white and whatever's left on my brush, so a little bit of like that yellowy color, a little bit of white, and I'm just going to very lightly pat the top. And if you feel like your colors are disappearing, it's because you're over blending. You want to just pat that color on there and let it be. Our butterfly wings over here are nice and dry. So what we're going to do is, after you added all your designs, you're going to fill in everything the way that you want it. You're going to take your tiny brush, make sure it's nice and clean, and you're going to take your black paint. I know, finally, right? Mix that tiny brush inside of that black acrylic, and to get a nice clean point on your paintbrush, you want to roll it on the edge of your plate. Okay? You guys know how to fill all this in. You're going to take your tiny brush, you're going to fill all this in with black paint. I just kind of started in the center and did circle motion, working my way out. And black will go over every single color because it's naturally darker. I'm going to trace over my teeth here. Unless you like that yellow color, you totally can leave it alone. Also, we're going to trace the outside of our calavera. Taking your time to kind of trace. Now, if for some crazy reason you mess up, and you're like, I really don't like what that looks like with that black acrylic, you could take your rag or your towel, wet the tip of your rag or your towel, and you can wipe off that acrylic. The acrylic is water-based, so it'll come right up. But you have to be careful if you scrub it too hard, you start to pick up all of the other colors, and you don't want that to happen. Our monarch butterfly over here, we're going to give it a nice outline. Trace our shapes here. And the ends of the butterfly also has kind of like a black fill. So just add like a thicker line on the end. And then our little butterfly here, you can do like the number 8. You can add little legs if you want. Now the inside of the wings, they're just like longer, kind of like V's with like the little, kind of like this shape here, but just a little bit smaller inside. So you want to do a line here and close it out. And then you want to cut that in half and then do 2 more. So just a couple of these little lines We're gonna let that sit. And then with the end of your paintbrush, the tiny brush, we're using a tiny brush to do all this line work, you're going to add all of your little dots. So, okay, so we have completed our pumpkin project. Thank you so much for painting with me. Again, my name is Gita, and you painted with me. Thank you so much. I am going to hand it over to the Executive Director of Pilsen Arts and Community House, who also painted a pumpkin with me today.
I did. I was in the background the whole time. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Gita, for doing this amazing class. And then just to add on that, we also support other local entrepreneurs in our neighborhood, like Gita herself, who runs Prism Arts, which is a BYOB painting studio housed in our space. So you can find us together here. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our incredible board of directors, an amazing group of farmers, nonprofit leaders, scientists, lawyers, and accountants, all dedicated to expanding sustainable agriculture in the Chicago region and building a more equitable food system. Our work would not be possible without your support, and we thank you so much. Thank you to our associate board, who helped with the planning and implementation for tonight's event. Your creativity and energy continues to inspire us as you work to strengthen the urban agricultural community in Chicago.
Now we're getting to the end of our time together. We've grown some mushrooms, we've cooked a meal together, and we've decorated some pumpkins. Next, we're going to truly connect by listening in on a roundtable discussion. We've brought together urban agriculture practitioners, leaders, and organizers from throughout Chicago to speak on these issues. Throughout this workshop, we encourage you to type your questions and any comments that you have in the chat bar next to the video. This way, we'll be standing by as AUA staff and workshop panelists to answer your questions. Now, let's go ahead, grab our drinks, sit back, and enjoy the discussion.
Hi everyone, my name is Imran Bhatti. I'm on the board of directors for Advocates for Urban Agriculture, and I'll be moderating today's panel. Let's get started with introductions. If you could just share your name, your affiliation.
Hi, my name is Saria Lofton, and I'm on faculty at the College of Nursing at the University of Illinois, Chicago.
My name is Selma. I am the current farm manager with Gardeneers, a nonprofit located on the west side of Chicago.
Hi, my name is Jahari Cole-Quayle. I'm a veteran organic farmer in Pembroke Township, Illinois, which is about 65 miles south of Chicago. And I run Yabo Farms, as well as help to manage Blueberry Farms and a member of Pembroke Farming Family. One thing I noticed is that all three of us ladies are scientists.
Of course.
That's beautiful.
Damn.
Yeah. I'm a Michigan State grad in microbiology, and I worked pharmaceuticals as research development. So I was a research scientist for years, and realizing where medicine was not going, and especially in the African American community, and seeing it firsthand through trials and tribulations, and seeing how the American Medical Association guarded African Americans and people of color as far as medications and things, I had to jump ship and restart my life. And I turned to food, and that's how I got back into the swing of I wanted to do food as medicine. And that's how it started over 30 years ago, and I haven't stopped since.
Okay, that's my next project.
Food is medicine? You're in the right area. You're in the right area. Yes.
I just like growing food. I like all the things you can do with the things we grow.
Yes.
And doing the work with the youth allows me to learn those things. So like this fall, this is technically fall, we're doing dye. We're dyeing, we're making salves and oils and all these different things, because of course we know food is medicine, but there's other ways that you can use these things that we grow, whether it's like using for steams or just so many things people keep throwing at us. And we're trying them all with the youth and tweaking it. And so just, keep going with the food is medicine, because I'm learning there's a full gamut. There's levels to it. So I'm excited. Yes, women scientists. Okay.
Have you used poke salad berries?
Okay, check it out. So we're using poke berries to dye this fall. We're using poke berries and turmeric.
Okay, good. Yes, we do that.
About how poisonous they are and how they're also a delicacy in certain areas.
Yeah.
But I saw a recipe. It was just too intense for me to try. And then I was also afraid I was going to die. So.
But other than that, the berries were used as the first ink. And so, yes, with Native Americans. And so with poke salad berries, especially tie-dye t-shirts, tie them up, dye them with it, and they'll stain everything. But the leaves themselves, it's the tannins that makes them bitter. So if you parboil the older leaves, then you remove the tannins, and then you cook it like spinach. Otherwise, you get young tender leaves, and you cook it just straight. Our woods are full of poke salad right now. So
we have them on our shipping container at the farm. I just know, I know what it is.
We just finished making some elderberry syrup. Yeah.
Okay.
Come on down and hang out. I'll show you all the weeds.
I want to invite myself because
we eat weeds all the time.
And that's cool, as long as they seasoned.
Oh, it tastes great. You'll be surprised. We change lives down here.
Okay.
Yes.
I love it.
So I think that's actually a good segue into the next set of questions, which maybe touch on some more serious issues. So in your mind, how has the social uprisings that we've seen this year, the intensification of the global health crisis and the pandemic, how have these things shifted the way you all think about food and food systems, if at all?
It hasn't changed how I think about food. The question when it comes to food production for me has always been, how close is your food source? Because when we think about just the basic things we need as human beings, we need food, we need shelter, and we need water. Unfortunately, there are a lot of folks, including myself, that live in areas where our access to food, it's not optimal. It's not fair. It's not equitable. It's not equal. And the pandemic and I guess 2020, it brought focus to that issue for a lot of folks who never thought about it. But no, for me, it's always been food production, hopefully at a local, hopefully locally, not just for like our carbon footprint, but for access to many people.
I tend to think it like just exposed the wound. I think that I'm conflicted because exposing the wound and not doing anything about it is harmful too. And it's hard sometimes to sit with that, to know what people are going through, just to be able to have basic food access and food security. And we're all aware of it. It's everywhere. It's on social media. It's in the news. It's everywhere. Yet we still can't get it together, but we know how to.
I feel like I'm a tree, that just, how the tree in your yard might have been sitting there for the last 200 years and watching trends occur and time pass by and see things reoccur, or just see, just the passing of everything. And so what we're talking about now is what we talked about 30 years ago. I feel like a history book. So in 2009, we actually, some of those same folks, we had rallied around for years, having meetings, figuring out what to do. In 2009, we approached the state government to develop the Food Farms and Jobs Act. And we developed a task force. And I was a member of the task force. We had listening sessions all throughout the state of Illinois, realizing that we were more corn and soybean even though we were the number one ag producers in the country, we were still soy and corn. And majority of the food, 99.8% of all of our food was imported into the state of Illinois.
You said 99, over 99%?
99.8%.
Wow.
So you're talking 2%, okay, or 0.2% was the only amount of food that we actually grew in the state of Illinois. That was it. Everything was exported out, as corn and soybeans was the major market. We were not, so it wasn't just Chicago was in a food desert, the whole state of Illinois was in a food desert. So a brief history lesson for everybody. But
I love history.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so important to ground this discussion. I think, I guess I was struck by, Saria, you said, a couple of times, we aren't fixing these issues, but we know how to. And I think that touches on comments that both you, Johari, and Selma made. What are those fixes that are perhaps within our reach that for political or other reasons we're just not implementing? And Johari, you mentioned some bright spots, perhaps spurred on by the emergent nature of the current climate. Are there sort of systemic changes to our food system that haven't happened up until this point that you see kind of becoming possible now? And has that 99.8% stat from 2009, has that moved at all?
A lot has changed. But the seriousness, the deep systemic issues are still existing. And that's part of the thing that, like Saria was mentioning, that really we have to do something about that. We've been glossing over it, covering it up. Their AUA is phenomenal. There was no such thing as an urban agricultural, movement at all. But the system still needs to change. And slowly but surely it is, but much more needs to be done.
I would add in terms of something that has come across in a lot of interviews that I've been doing in the focus groups is that we have such wonderful knowledge in this space. Like, people know how to do what they do. That's not the issue. There's two things that keep coming up, and it's around land access and water access. And it's like, I, as a novice, I'm still perplexed at the water access piece because I thought the lake was for everybody. I guess I feel
I got you after this. Go ahead. Okay. I'll talk about it.
I feel like collectively we could redo this food system like that, but there has to be some political wherewithal to really push that forward, and they have to turn to the people who know what they're doing.
All right. So when just to piggyback off of that, yes, land and water access. And so when we think about land access, to put it simplistically, Chicago has very strict zoning laws, right? And so zoning prevents farm growers from being able to grow whatever they want, wherever they want, because there are certain things that you have to do. There are certain areas where it wouldn't be feasible. And in certain instances, it just wouldn't aesthetically fit in with the neighborhood. And so it's up to the neighborhood to, of course, talk about rezoning. That costs money. Water access. The city of Chicago has some regulations in terms of being able to access municipal water via fire hydrants. And that process can be costly. And so most people think, if I get the right, I'm not good with tools, y'all, don't judge me. If I get like the right wrench that goes on this bolt and just, turn it and do the right thing, I can get access to water. And it's like, that's not how that works. You have to call a plumber. You have to get the pieces you need certified. That water piece can't move. This can be thousands of dollars. Those are really the zoning and the the cost of getting access to water are things keeping a lot of growers at home, besides what's going on now.
I would also add to that, if I can, is that resources, period. The lack of resources is an issue. One of the misnomers about, or misconceptions about farming is that, oh, I can throw a seed in the ground and, and that's all I need to know is, have my Johnny Appleseed bag, and some good soil, and that's it. Well, that's fine and dandy if you're going to be self-sufficient, but when you are, as soon as you sell one dime worth of a product, you've become a commercial farmer. As a lot of people who are newer farmers, they're not second, third, fourth generation farms where you have equipment, where they don't realize the cost of a hoop house, the cost of a basic little small tiller. They don't realize the cost. Oh, well, I need a tractor, or I need, especially the larger the land, they need more equipment, or at least to help them out, implements. A decent tractor is $20,000. One of the problems that large commercial conventional farmers, and why they're losing their shirts, are they get caught up in the trap of, the bankers end up owning all of the properties. Mm-hmm. So they get in, well, all I need is a $150,000 tractor. They'll go into the bank. Well, the bank is not going to give them anything less than $200,000. And so they're like, well, what am I do with the rest of it? Well, go get, an addition to your house.
And now then that kills the community, because they'll eventually file bankruptcy. And
absolutely.
It's like, but
and now you're $200,000 in debt. You're $200,000 in debt before you see the first crop grow.
And it's like, oh gosh. Yes. That part. That's when you move out the city. Yeah, man. I think about it on both sides. It's like you can get it, but it's like, where, like you said, there's the will, but is there a way?
Is there a way? That's, yeah.
So given that there's this context in which there are these huge systemic factors at play, are there things that you all, us as food systems practitioners in different ways, can do to promote economic self-sufficiency in the communities that we're thinking about, or just otherwise like make urban agriculture more feasible? Or is it are we just hitting up against these bigger barriers that take a more like organized effort than any one of us can work on ourselves?
I would say that's actually how I came into urban ag when I first started investigating it. And I speak to it in terms of like the economic piece. I am curious, and I'm going to float this out to you too. It seems like a lot of people work in silos and they are working really hard, but it's like they're running like on this treadmill by themselves. And if it was, and I think that's what led me to the local food system in terms of how can these alternative food spaces be further, how can they be entrenched in the food system that exists? Or is that negate the whole point of having it?
I believe urban agriculture should, in a way, be individuals in a collective, but there should be some fluidity in terms of communication, but not so much that we go full Upton Sinclair at the end of the jungle. We should just have large scale farms, because that is how we got to conventional agriculture. And we know here we are, right? And I'm saying this as a cyclone. I went to Iowa State, I am an agronomist. We're trying to figure out how to feed billions of people by 2050. That was drilled into us. We are feeding the world. That is a thing.
Feed the world.
You feed the world.
You can't feed yourself.
Feed the world, Fred. And it's like, okay.
And where's your meal coming from?
Right. I need to eat. And so, having looked at agriculture from, of course, being formally trained in conventional agriculture and then coming back to Chicago, we all still need to be individuals. We all still need a niche, but we all should be able to work together to be able to say, hey, you doing this? Okay, I'm doing this. let's see how we can work together.
We have something similar with the larger farmers here. We are part of a collective. They're not trying to be nonprofit. They're trying to make that moolah. Unfortunately, a lot of them, and we should not feel bad because the majority of them are on welfare. So it is a systemic issue throughout our whole entire United States of America. That's a problem with in terms of how we view our food systems around the country. And while we're importing so many foods from around the world, and as opposed to growing it in, within our own state. So I said it wasn't Chicago was just a food desert. The state of Illinois is a food desert. And now, unfortunately, even the United States is becoming a food desert. We've just ousted our last producers of garlic. Garlic is now imported into the United States on a large scale from China.
It means prison labor.
Yeah, we just stopped doing that because, again, we're not respecting the food system the way it should be respected.
How do you all see the link between the history of Black and Indigenous land loss and disenfranchisement specifically within agriculture, and the ongoing calls to, with defunding the police and police brutality at their core, but more broadly about the lives and rights of Black communities in cities like Chicago?
I think when it comes to the disenfranchisement was one thing that really stuck out a lot was this historical trauma that kept popping up in the interviews about the connection to sharecropping and slavery as a strong stop for any type of urban agriculture. Why would I want to grow food? That's like slavery. And then and then looking into it and looking at how these Black codes came about after Reconstruction. And there is definitely some, there's this historical context that speaks to a lot of, these societal, larger social structural issues that have really influenced how people see things even 50, 100 years later. But there has to be some healing around that.
I think that, you mentioned defund the police. And, sometimes when we take harsh, very defining words like that, they can have a double-edged sword. The movement was not about stripping, you have schools of thought where stripping money from the police officers, from the police force, as opposed to what they were saying, at the root of it was diversify law enforcement so that it's not just, the RoboCops, doing their thing, but you have other kinds of people involved in law enforcement that can address other issues. But yeah, with sharecropping, I know when I first started back, with it, my grandmother was, when I started wanting to grow food again or grow food on my own, have my own farm, my grandmother literally said, I worked my heart, I worked my, my fingers to the bone so you wouldn't have to do this. I was the first scientist in the household. I taught doctors, did all that. And for me to want to give that up to go work and do what she ran away from was very disheartening, So it's a stigma in the African-American community that never got healed properly.
Is there a role for farmers to use their platform? Or is that perhaps asking too much of folks trying to grow food?
I just tell people to educate. It doesn't take much to educate somebody, at least if you're decently informed. As a farmer, most people don't know about our issues. When we think about elections, right? I always tell people all elections matter. But the most important politician to me is the one I can shake their hand tomorrow. If I can walk into their office, either make an appointment with their administrative assistant or just post up like I'm at the barbershop for them to walk in, that's the most important politician. So for me right now, at where I'm located, that's Alderman Michael Scott Jr. I'm gonna just throw that name out there. But when you think about as a grower, I want to know everybody that runs where I am. And so educating people about that, like, hey, everything else is important. We have a couple of referendums we should look at, not telling people how to vote. But the people who will, because our aldermen are on the city council. City council determines zoning. That.
And I would like to add that people need to realize the real cost of food. For so long, we have cheapened our food supply. So that's part of that systemic issue that needs to be, revamped. Food was, it was farmed or gathered on the backs of enslaved folks for 400 years. After that, then it was on the backs of migrants, our migrant brothers and sisters coming, across the border that were making pennies to the dollar, treated very badly, sprayed with chemicals and pesticides, a lot of health disparities, and so all of those costs that you did not see, that's what cheapened our food system. So now the new urban farmers, the new people who are farming for profit, that look like us, we're demanding the real cost, and now no one wants to pay that because they're so used to a cheapened system. So we need to educate people on the real cost of food.
Yeah, I so agree with you. I think it's so hard sometimes to understand, for people to understand why McDonald's has I guess it's up to $3 now for their value meal.
It's up to $3.
It's like, and food that the hard work and heart went into, and that true value is negated for that meal, and not knowing everything. So much of that's in there is manufactured in a way you don't even want to know, and that is putting us on a road towards disease burden. I mean, right now, metformin has got to be one of the most popular diabetes drugs in the country, because it's with type 2 diabetes. Now they're talking about cancer associated with it, right? So it's hard to see what you don't see, and it's hard to talk to people about it in that way. And I think that's probably like the biggest barrier, but I think that's why it's important to start talking about the real cost of food. So I absolutely agree with you.
I think in your responses, there's been fodder for another 24 hour-long panels at least. But to wrap this one up, I guess, is there something about your work or in the food, local food space around Chicagoland or Northern Illinois that is bringing you hope right now that you'd like to leave with the viewers?
Seeing these two ladies is oh my God, my heart is jumping for joy. Like, to see a sister in a hoop house with some food behind her. I see what you're doing.
Thank
you working on the medical side. Oh my God, trying to tell people to eat right for their health for 30 years. You don't understand. You all bring me joy. So much joy. Keep doing what you're doing and stay inspired.
Oh, thank you. Oh, well, to piggyback off of that, anytime I see youth that are interested in agriculture, because I have teens that come outside and first week they're running from bees.
Yeah.
And then and by the end of the program, they're like, no, it's like a dog. If you run, it'll chase you. And it's like, yeah, you listened. And so that's what gives me hope. The youth that love agriculture, the city kids that love being outside.
I would definitely say my students, they are so interested in this work. It is so cool to see that, and like so many that come up and want to work with around food access, working on the west side, which I try to really get people to come work on the west side and with the food stuff. And then the also, which is probably more personal to me, like when the first time I see people eat they're like apple bananas. You can't get them here. I ate them in Ghana, and then you can get them in Malawi. And to see people's, and because they look rotten, because they got all the brown spots, right?
Right.
My kid's face and just like eat 3 of them. And I was like, I love, because that gives me so much when they see the variety of food and how beautiful and tasty it is. And that the stuff that we get here, it doesn't have to be this way. Mm. That gives me hope.
Absolutely. I have a picture of that fruit you're talking about. My daughter is working on her dissertation in Zambia.
Mm. Really? Oh, yeah. Gosh. I will get jealous.
And she showed me that fruit.
Did you say it's called an apple banana?
I don't know what it's called. I'm going to tell you, it tastes like apple and banana with 7-Up, all in one bite. It's so good. It's like the best banana I ever had.
That sounds amazing. Thank you, panelists, for your comments and for this great discussion. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this panel.
Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's virtual Growing Chicago Soiree. Before we close out the night, we just want to say one final thank you again to a few individuals and organizations. First, thank you to the sponsors for tonight's event, to all of the partnering organizations and workshop leaders, to AUA's board and associate board for helping to plan this event, and to all of you for joining us tonight and for supporting Chicago's urban agricultural community. Over the next few weeks at AUA, we will be hosting a virtual fundraising campaign to continue building support for our efforts to strengthen Chicago's urban agricultural community. We encourage you to check out our website to learn more about the campaign, and keep an eye out for some of the amazing raffle items that will correspond with the 4 themes from tonight's event: grow, harvest, celebrate, and connect. Thank you so much for your participation in tonight's virtual Growing Chicago Soiree, for your commitment to our work at AUA, and for supporting sustainable urban agriculture in the Chicagoland region. Onward and outward.